not hearing interpretation, and we do have people on the call who need that voice interpretation.
Gotcha. Hello. Hello, everyone. It is so good to see everyone today. Some of you I saw yesterday, some of you I haven't seen in a while. So I want to say it's important. I'm so happy that you all are here today with your time. Thank you so much. Today is a really important day. We have a good speaker today, and we are going to talk about a complicated subject, PTSD. It can be a heavy issue. And so there will be some support after us. If you need to reach out to me, please do. Okay. I know that it's hard to get time with Melissa, but we have Melissa Anderson here today, the psychologist. She's joining us from Deaf IES, Deaf Action Work. She's done amazing work with that. And we look forward to what she's going to share with us today. So please, Melissa, take it away. Hi, everyone. Thanks so much. I'm so happy to be here today. I'm here to connect with you all. Yes, it is a complicated subject that we're going to talk about. The different ways that we can support the trauma that we will encounter, different experiences that people go through that cause trauma. But the organizers that present on this topic, I prefer to be very flexible and interactive with experiences. So please, if you have any questions that come up or a thought that pops in your head that you're curious about, please go ahead and raise your hand or wave and get my attention. And I'll be happy to call on you, and you can deliver your feedback or your message. Or if you want to wait till the end, that's fine as well. If you perhaps feel a little bit more comfortable typing your questions, some people like to monitor the chat, and they can also deliver your question that way. Okay. So first, I want to say welcome. My name is Melissa Anderson, and this is my name sign. I am a hearing clinical psychologist, and I graduated from Gallaudet University in 2012. And since then, I've been working for the University of Massachusetts, Chan Medical School. The work that I do, the role that I have is really divided into half the time I'm interacting and with a variety of deaf clients and counselors and therapists, outpatient, not inpatient. And then the other part of my time I spend focused on research and how to improve our deaf mental health system. How do we create a more accessible mental health system for our deaf clients? On the personal side, who am I? I'm a wife. I'm also a mother. I have obviously my boy there. He's 3. Takes a lot of time, right? And they say that the 2s were a challenge. No. I'm thinking the 3s is giving me a run for my money for sure. So the plan for today is I would like to start with introductions. I want to see who's in the room, who's here today. I want to see what you want to benefit from today. And then perhaps discuss separately the tradition of the classic PTSD model to a more complicated one with some PTSD examples. And then I want to perhaps discuss those traumatic disassociations. And that's the sign I'll use for that. And I also want to discuss some clinical skills when it's time to work with someone who has that disassociation. Really, my goal and my hope is that there's time for us to have some discussion and some Q&A. Does that sound like an okay plan to everyone? Perfect. Cool. Okay, so it's important. Today's theme can have some heavy feelings that can come up. There could be some triggers that present themselves. Whatever the reason is that you need a break, please go ahead and do so. You do not have to sit here and suffer through the conversation without taking a break for yourself. If you need to take a walk or whatever that may be, and then you can come back and you can rejoin us when you're ready. Okay. I would really like to better understand who's here with me today, what you hope to gain from this training today. So if we could just take turns. Based on my screen, I see, oh, if you could just deliver your name and your pronouns, your professional role, today's learning, what do you want that to be? And then the icebreaker question that I have is, when you look back on your life, you think about, the clothes that you used to wear, just, if you look back on all the things that you've done, what is one of those embarrassing things with an outfit, like a fashion faux pas that you did that you are embarrassed about? So based on my screen, I see, okay, cool. If you don't mind going first, Michelle. Hello, my name is Michelle Niehaus. This is my sign name. And I use she, her pronouns. My role is the program manager for the Deaf and Hard of Hearing Services it's a long Department of Behavioral Health and Developmental Sight Disabilities. What I plan to benefit from this training is to develop a system that I can take care of one day, that I can hope to give back resources to support people that have trauma. It affects lots of people out in the community. So trying to understand that and how to support that better, and what we can do to develop a network for that. Embarrassing fashion moment. Oh my goodness, the 80s, should I just say maybe? When the hair was pulled back in the ponytail and it was like really full and curly. Yeah, that one. That's me. Awesome. Thank you, Michelle. I will also put the question in the chat because it will be easier to see everyone without having to share the screen.
Okay, next we'll have Anthony Adkins. Hi, everyone. My name is Anthony Adkins. This is my sign name, AA. My pronouns are he, him. Let me find the question in the chat. Let's see. My role is program coordinator for the Deaf and Hard of Hearing services that we provide under the Department of Behavioral Health and Developmental Disabilities. When I think of an embarrassing moment, I can remember one distinctly. When you had pants and you would roll the cuffs up on the bottom, when I look back, that style was so embarrassing. Thank you, Anthony. Okay, next we'll go to Paula.
Hi, my name is Paula Brun. I am the lead manager for behavioral health services here at North Key. My pronouns are she and her. I hope to personally gain lots of knowledge in working with clients, and also information that is useful to share with other clinicians that I supervise. Embarrassing fashion trend. Grew up in the 80s, you can almost name it. I think, Michelle, I go with you, the big hair. I had the big hair going on.
Awesome. I love we have many AD styles happening among us today. Jade Bell. Okay, we will go to Mikai Lombardi. Hi, my name is Mikai Lombardi. My professional role is manager. My pronouns are she and her, and an embarrassing fashion statement. The most embarrassing thing I ever wore was just trying to match things like how people used to do. I mean, I didn't know how to do it now. I didn't know how to coordinate compared to now. Wonderful, thank you. Okay, let's go to D Harding.
Hey, my name is Dominique. I'm a he, his, him as a pronoun, and my professional role is peer support. I'm an adult peer support specialist over at Bridgehaven. And the things I want to get out from this presentation is to really learn more about variety of complex PTSD and other PTSD, and also utilize that to, I guess, share it with my clients and also share, use it for myself too. So since I have PTSD as well. So hopefully I'll, I can probably get the most out of it. And really, the most embarrassing moment, because I used to, I used to wear oversized shorts and oversized pants and white t-shirt. That's back in in the early 2000s. So, now it's kind of out of town now.
Perfect. Thank you for sharing. Okay, let's go back to Jade Bell now. If you don't mind, introduce yourself. Give a little bit of history, your pronouns, your professional role, and what are you hoping to gain from this presentation today? And then the last thing is a fun question. When you look back into the past and your fashion, what do you feel is the most embarrassing thing that you wore? Hi, my name is Jade Bell. My pronouns are she, her. My professional role is to provide support.
It's a peer support specialist.
And I'd like to learn everything today. I feel like there's a lot I haven't learned that I want to gain today. And my most embarrassing outfit experience, there was a pair of socks that I wore. When people wore that longer style of sock, yeah, that was mine. I love it. I love it. Thank you. Okay, let's go to Zach Childers.
Hello, my name is Zach. My pronouns are he, him. I work as an outpatient clinician. I'm hearing as well as an interpreter, so providing direct services in ASL to clients. I see both hearing and deaf. I think what I want to learn out of this session today is just the commonalities between in the deaf community of PTSD, what that looks like and feels like. And I think the most embarrassing fashion trend I used was the bowl haircut. That wasn't clothes-wise, but it was just a bowl haircut that you cut all the way around and stuff. I would rock that out for years.
Thank you for sharing that and being open about that. Lori.
Hi, my name is Lori. My name's LQ, Lori Caller. And I am my pronouns are she, her. I'm the program manager for the Deaf and Hard of Hearing program at 7 County Services. What I would like to get out of today, I think, is a better understanding of trauma from a deaf-specific framework, so that I can best support my clinicians, case managers, peers that are in the field. And my fashion profile would go back to the late 80s, early 90s, stirrup pants and leg warmers in very bright colors.
That's a good one. Thank you. Juliet. Hi, my name is Jules. I'm a clinician for mental health services, and I've been so for 15 years. Oh, an embarrassing moment. Well, keep in mind that I grew up and when I had to wear clothes for picture day and the way I had to dress, that was embarrassing. Thank you. Maria Castle. Hi, my name is Maria Castle. Oh, one sec. My pronouns are she and her. My professional role
Is a peer
is an
support
adult
specialist.
peer support specialist. I suffer from PTSD myself, and I'd like to be able to find resources for myself as well as others where I work. So just more in-depth information related to that. And my most embarrassing fashion moment. I was a tomboy growing up. So I wore the overalls and everything related to boys and how they tended to dress back then. So that's more embarrassing when I look back. You know, I looked and acted like a boy. All right, thank you for sharing. Let's see who's next. Holly Evans. Hi, I'm Holly. My pronouns are she, her. I'm a case manager at 7 counties. And what I'd like to learn most today is appropriate language to use that applies to the topic related to the deaf community and hearing professionals, just to make sure that we are using appropriate verbiage. My most embarrassing fashion, again, we're in the 80s and the 90s here. And if you remember that kind of surf style tops that people wore, I used to do that. I had a rack of them at the house. So that's a little bit embarrassing when I look back on that. Beautiful, thank you. Gwendolyn. Hi, my name is Gwendolyn Tyree. My pronouns are she and her. I'm an intern right now at SCS, and I will graduate in September. The most embarrassing, well, no, let me back up. What I want to learn is information that applies to my deaf and hard of hearing clients that I work with. Not only that, I want to work with learn about anybody that I work with in the deaf and hard of hearing communities to better be able to help them as I provide mental health treatment. My most embarrassing outfit, I'm a 90s baby. And I was part of the emo movement. So I had the hair that was in different directions. I had the dark eyeliner, and you remember the outfits that the emo kids wore back then and the attitude that went along with it. So when I look back, I'm like, that was me. Whew. Yeah, that leads me to my most embarrassing moment. This was while I was in high school. I was a little bit emo myself, a little bit grunge. And I had dyed my hair completely black and I wore it straight down my face, and I wore white makeup and my eyes were accentuated with that wing eyeliner. I actually have pictures to prove it, and it is embarrassing. Okay. Well, I think we're finished with our introductions. I hope I didn't miss you. Let me know if I did by waving your hands. All right, let me change my view. Today, I'd like to review what classic or traditional PTSD is before I go in depth about it, and then move on to what complex PTSD is. So it's post-traumatic stress disorder, or PTSD, the acronym. And really what that means is after experiencing or going through something traumatic, your body responds in different emotional ways or emotional reactions due to that traumatic experience. It impacts your everyday living, functioning, employment, and relationships, your health as well, and quality of life. People who have experienced trauma, let me ask everyone here, what percent do you feel experience PTSD? That the trauma actually led to a PSD diagnosis? What percentage of people would you say? Just guess and throw it out.
%70.
Okay, we have 70%. Any other guesses?
Okay, 65%.
Okay, good guess. It's 1/3. 1/3 of people who have experienced trauma at some point develop PTSD. So that means more than 60% of individuals who are resilient, they go through life, but they have that traumatic experience. The reasons why may vary. Why one person would develop it as opposed to one who won't. And we'll go into those more complex features soon.
So traditionally, classic PTSD has 4 categories. And we'll expand on each one of those, okay? When I imagine PTSD, often I think about this. I think that people are experiencing what this image looks like. When you look back at it, it's traumatic. You have bad dreams about the trauma. And the flashbacks sometimes that you have just thinking about that memory. It can actually feel like you're in it again. You're back in the trauma again, like you're reliving it in that moment. So under the re-experiencing the trauma, this is what we typically see, and we can talk about it through the classic PTSD lens. Let me give you a moment just to look over this slide. Now, there's two categories here that we go through when people are trying to avoid what they want to avoid while they're being labeled with the PTSD. Things that could remind them of the trauma, supposedly. People who perhaps have triggers when they think back to the trauma. So those are things that they want to avoid, those things in those places. If they perhaps see a person or they go to a certain place, that could cause a trigger to the trauma. And then the body can react immediately with perhaps sweating, hard to breathe, heart pounding, you know, ready to bolt, freezing in the moment. It also can create these emotional reactions of overwhelmness and some fear. I often share myself for, surviving trauma. I've experienced domestic violence in my early 20s. And it happened in the Pennsylvania area. And now I live in Massachusetts. It's still, if I'm in a car that looks like my ex's car, I get this reaction of sweating right away. It's an automatic body response to the trauma. Just a similar car causes that heart pounding palpitations, right? That feeling, just that knowing of it's him. And that's my body reacting immediately to the trauma trigger. The third category of examples is that the thoughts of negativity and, the feelings of guilt. For example, the things that you believe about yourself, negative things that I'm a lousy person, I'm no good, I'm damaged. Also, you believe negative things about other people. You can't trust people, perhaps. Everyone's dangerous. Then you develop negative thoughts, perhaps, about the world. The world's just not a safe place. And understand, it's really not that it's not an accurate belief. It's just you have to find the balance. The world can be a dangerous place, absolutely. But in general, it can also be a safe place. So trying to find a balance of thought, going to everything being negative, every environment being dangerous, to find a balance. Also, a lot of people go through the blame. If I didn't do this, if I didn't do that, if I had only done this, then I wouldn't have experienced the trauma, right? Very rarely they want to blame the person that actually created the trauma. They want to do self-blame. And then that turns into this strong feelings of guilt and shame and some fear that then creates the isolation. Any questions so far around the classic PTSD, how we see that? Okay, now the fourth category is related to the over-response, right? The overreaction that you may have. And they typically call that the fight or flight reaction. A person can get upset and get angry. They can become aggressive. They can be overly obsessed, right? With like those around them, hyper alert perhaps. They can be easily startled if someone approaches. Hard time focusing, easily distracted. Typically, having issues of not being able to sleep versus bad dreams sometimes can be separate, but can fall all under the PTSD, okay? So now, I want to move on to complex PTSD and, reveal where there are some things that are similar. And then also I want to point out the differences here. We'll call these the risk factors for complex PTSD compared to the classic factors that we saw under the classic PTSD. Typically here we see people be chronic or repeated. They tend to have chronic or repeated episodes of trauma here versus a one-time trauma event. This tends, we typically the one-time event we label under the classic PTSD. Here, this becomes complex because it's a repeated trauma pattern, perhaps, or chronic. We see this a lot, typically with younger people with PTSD. Why? Well, because younger children, their minds are not able to manage the emotional responses of the experience. They're not skilled to navigate the experience yet. Oftentimes what happens is the mind and the body have to disassociate themselves from the trauma, right? To protect and block it out. And typically that's kind of like how a machine works, right? Like they can't handle it, so therefore
It's a protective mechanism.
so they can protect themselves and use it as a protective mechanism. It's a foundation of disassociation. Oftentimes, if we see the sexual abuse, such as rape, more often, that's complex PTSD. And then the last one is the trauma that happens that's close to family or a caretaker, someone that you were supposed to have a bond of trust with, and that was broken. And that becomes a complex PTSD situation to navigate. The person that you were supposed to feel safe with, that offered security.
That you had attachment to.
That you had attachment to. So that, that first bond that you experience with someone sometimes, right? If I'm supposed to rely on that person for that connection and they've taken advantage of me or the situation, that relationship going forward is now damaged for a lifetime. Now understand, that does not mean that the person will never develop a healthy relationship to navigate with this person, but there will be some bumps in the road for sure. There's still hope is what I want to say, okay? There is still hope after that kind of trauma. Hi, this is Makai. I'm curious, the trauma that you're speaking of in early childhood, say with the loss of a member of a family, could that be complex PTSD, or would you label that as classic? Well, really that kind of trauma itself is not something that is a definite classic or complex. I know you don't want me to say this, but it depends. The response depends. Why? Because how did the loss occur? What was the experience during the loss? Were there other risk factors involved? So that's where we have that like depend. So yes, having someone close to you pass unexpectedly, like a grandmother or a grandfather, or if they're older, that's expected. So that's more of a natural loss that we expect to have happen, right? But a murder or suicide or something where there's a loss that wasn't expected and how you experience that. So I'm wondering, oh, good. So So I lost my mom at 10. And so I'm wondering if some of the issues that, like, I'm not able to develop a strong bond with anyone, I'm wondering, is that part of that situation? It's kind of hard to explain, but if you ask me, you know, have I gone to counseling? No. But do I have the ability to recognize, to go through that? That's where I'm trying to see how I'm going to develop a relationship with anyone like that. Thank you, and I appreciate you sharing, and I'm sorry for your loss. It's been a while now. It's been almost 20 years now. Complex PTSD. So everything that we've already discussed, like the 4 risk factors, plus there are 3 more types of examples that we'll go into as well. With complex PTSD, the concept of self-blame is the worst. Oftentimes we see people who actually believe that they're worthless, that they have 0 worth on earth. Down deep, they feel shame. They feel dirty. They feel damaged. They don't feel like they're ever going to be able to recover from the trauma. Oftentimes, I describe the feeling as this missing piece inside. There's this hole that can't be filled. It's a little bit more deeper than the traditional PTSD.
And more prolonged.
And more prolonged. Oftentimes, the challenge with building and creating relationships is that many of the first or the most important priorities in a relationship are already disrupted. The foundation is just not there. That healthy connection is not there. Oftentimes you'll see this like love-hate. There's this one moment, I love you, you're so great, I love everything about you. And then the next moment it's like, you're the worst person. It's the exact opposite. And if you think about it, related to the survivor role, the victim role in that moment, you know,
And also the savior role.
and in that moment you become that savior role. And it swings so quickly from love to hate. Because many people are just willing to be tolerant of the swing. They're okay with going through all the shifts. And oftentimes many people burn bridges, disconnecting from their personal life and in their personal life and as well as in their professional life. My counseling work has shown me that several people who have had a complex PTSD, they just set everything on fire. Their relationships in the past were just done. Like it's the last person left in Massachusetts, like willing to work with that person, right? Like that's where some people are. And it can be a roller coaster.
Now, you do want to recognize that a lot of what we discuss will sometimes be labeled borderline personality disorder. Personally, I don't use the term borderline. I feel that complex trauma or complex PSD and viewing it through that lens is more compassionate and less stigmatizing. But for each professional, I'm sure you have your own opinions about the usage of that term. I think I saw a hand. Oh, yes, Gwendolyn. Yes, being that I'll be involved in social work in the future, the term bipolar, what are your views on that? So it's funny. Sometimes when people hear a term or a word, like a mood swing, they think that applies to bipolar. And really, when we're talking about this, it's a quick mood shift. And that typically isn't a part of bipolar disorder. So that would mean it was more of maybe a 3-month stint of depression, feeling apathy, or maybe 1 week of going up and being manic after that. So it's that kind of switch. But if we're talking about a change during the day, that wouldn't apply to being bipolar. And a lot of deaf individuals misunderstand what's going on and use that term or that concept and, thinking of it as a mood swing. I think people in general really don't understand the timeline that is involved in actual bipolar disorder. Also here it mentions that it's possible that a person is really not motivated or interested in building relationships. And that in and of itself can be a protective mechanism. Maybe you've had a person that has hurt you for so long and you try to avoid that person completely to avoid being hurt again. I'm trying to think of some examples of that protective mechanism again. So it can be helpful as far as developing compassion. So emotional dysregulation. You'll see this as a feature of classic PSD, but in complex PSD, it's much more serious. You'll see a person have episodes of anger, quick switches in how they're behaving, and also disassociation. Sometimes that disassociation can seem more in-depth, and it often comes from stimuli or a trigger that happens, and automatically a response will take place. It's a survival response as well. Disassociation involves a lot of misunderstanding. Part of that happens because it's an identified disorder. It used to be called before it was called multiple personality disorder. So I think that when we discuss the concept of disassociation, partly people assume that it means
Not showing up and seeing yourself.
and it doesn't really mean that, and we'll discuss that more. Most often, what I notice is that someone disassociates in front of me, and I'll notice their eye gaze look off away from mine. Like that, like I just did right there. You can see them literally just drift off like they're daydreaming and gently start looking off to the side. And that may happen for 5 or 10 seconds, or it may happen longer than that. And so I'll try to get their attention and rein their attention back in. But it looks very subtle. It's very subtle, a very light reaction. And especially since we're working remotely, it can be more of a challenge to catch that virtually when disassociation is happening over Zoom or over video phone, as opposed to actually being in the same space together. So definitely there are times now when I almost miss it happening right in front of me. It's harder to catch on Zoom. So something to think about. Which clients are best suited for Zoom or virtual meeting, and which are best in a one-on-one in-person setting. The person may also act differently. Their voice or their signing may shift. And it's not an obvious, huge difference of personality or anything like that, but it's just something that you notice. You can also see a quick change in emotional responses. I'll share one example. I was working with a client, and I mentioned the name of a school. And they'd already had experience with their school being bullied there. And in 1 or 2 seconds after mentioning that, the person's eyes got big and there were signs of fear and a total shift towards tremendous rage towards me. They took off their shoe and they were ready to throw it at me because I triggered them and they had a survival reaction. And it happened again, quick, within a matter of just a couple of seconds. Sometimes if you haven't done anything, you can't avoid that trigger from happening to that other person. It can still happen. So I'd like to discuss different strategies that we can develop with our clients beforehand so that we're ready in the case that that change happens while we're working in that moment. We can try to use these new skills while active disassociation is going on, but it is not the best time. The goal is always to act proactively and prepare beforehand so that we have the skill set and the tools ready so that they are more accessible to us when we confront the situation and conflict happens. Now, as far as your experiences, have you seen someone disassociate, whether it was a client? Have you noticed anything in your work with a person's behavior or emotions? Has anyone experienced that? And what was that? Okay, I'll repeat the question. So have you seen someone disassociate? Have you seen it yourself? Have you noticed the signs of it? Is it something that you've experienced? It doesn't happen all the time. Keep that in mind, which is a good thing. You know, we don't want our clients disassociating every time we meet with them. But at the same time, we do want to be ready and prepared so that we can manage the situation when it does present itself. I recently talked about things that we can do when before we are in a situation where someone is disassociating, different tools and strategies that we can use. So let's start with tools. I find that a toolkit is critical and essential for clients that I work with, especially when I'm working through Zoom. Of course, I have a lot less control of what's going on in that setting because I'm not in the actual room with the person. It's easier for a client to click out of the Zoom session, close their laptop and be done with it. And sometimes I'm like, what just happened? Especially there's a client who disassociates often. We work together building a toolkit so that it's there while we're working together. It's something that can be used if you're traveling, if you're on an airplane, if you're in person, associating, again, for 4 years, bringing them to meetings. It may sound like a simple thing. It may sound like something silly to do, but it's a resource so that we can connect. And it's very, very helpful to have this toolkit. And they're based on tactile, on touch. There are so many cool toys and tools that can be used for ADHD, for feeling, for disabilities.
Sensory.
Sensory. There's so many sensory, tactile things that can be played with and used. So here's just some on the screen. Some of them are old school, where you have a stress ball that a person can squeeze as needed. Play-Doh is another one. A heavy blanket can be helpful. Stuffed animals, a heavy stuffed animal, anything. I've just came up with different ideas that you see on the screen in front of you. Tactile things that a person can feel and touch. So if you find that that's helpful, or is there anything else you can think of? This is Makai. I have a question as it relates to disassociation. So in that case, and using sensory tools to help them, would that prevent the disassociation from happening in the first place? Do you find that helpful? And this is Melissa. Yes. Okay, so with stress though, what I mean is, if a person is stressed, is that a way to help them? And this is Melissa. This is a great question. And really, it's important for me to emphasize with disassociation, it can happen when a person is trying to let go from reality, from what's actually happening in the here and now. So the goal is to use these tactile tools to help that person stay in the here and now, to stay with us. And this is Makai, to stay in real life. And Melissa, definitely. It's more of a preventative tool. If someone has already disassociated, you see them already looking away from you, you see the signs already happening. If you try to give them something during that time, it could bring them back to you if you just take that tool and hand it off to them. but that would mean they're not in a full dissociative state yet if you can bring them back to you by handing them a sensory tool. And I'll discuss that more, how to prevent it early on in the disassociation process to prevent it from going to its full capacity.
Let's see what, excuse me, let's see what's in the chat. Ah, okay. Nice. I see in the chat that people are talking about different weighted animals that you can put in the microwave and heat up, or that they smell good. Yeah, those are wonderful suggestions. Any other questions, comments? Another important sense that we have is smell. Our smell sense can have a strong association to memories. I have one client who has a few smell triggers when they look back, and they use they either use it as a preventative or as a as an opposite way, but understand there's smells in everyday life. So you could use an old school approach, right? Like, but today there's so many different things you can do. There's different oils, right? There's different scented lip balms that smell good that are right there by the nose, right? There's things that you can put on your hands, like lotions and whatnot, that are scented. There's a variety of ideas when it comes to the sense of smell. But remember, I'm here now. The concept is having them here now with you, here in the now. Any thoughts, any questions around that? Okay, next I want to talk about being grounded or being grounded or being grounded, depending on what sign you want to use. But you all can pick which one you like best. But I, again, will emphasize that helping the client recognize being here, being in the room, being present, being safe, right? Trying to not have them look so far back in the past. Having a discussion about being grounded, like being physically grounded, being mentally grounded, and being soothed, grounded. And so I'm going to show you a video, and it's going to describe each one of those, and it's going to show examples of each one of those. That I hope to send this out to you, because there's also a script for the whole being grounded practice. So I have that as well. And so this is something you can do with your clients in advance, even getting prepared for when that moment happens, when there is a trigger that is likely to come up, possibly. You can use this technique, right, together, or they can use it independently. And this is a way for them to get self-grounded, right? So hopefully the video will show clear. Let's hope. And if everyone maybe turns off their camera, that seems to help as well to have the video play more clearly. So let's try that. And understand, there's no sound. There's just captioning. So it should be accessible for everyone.
So I will share the link to that short video. It's on our deaf page of our website if you'd like to watch it again. Hopefully you get my handouts, and if you don't, let me know. You might have noticed while watching that it felt a little bit like a script, but that work, typically people say close your eyes before they do an exercise like this. But we want the person to keep their eyes open throughout, because again, the goal is to be connected. And often we see traditionally clients are encouraged to close their eyes, but that closing of the eyes can cause a person to go deeper in their memory and disassociate further. But we're trying to keep them here, remember, so that's why we encourage them to keep their eyes open. We have a little bit of time now for some questions and discussions. Let me remove my slides from the screen. All right, one moment. Okay. What thoughts came to mind? What questions do you have? What are you thinking about? I open the floor to you. Michelle says, yeah, everyone's been quiet.
Maria?
Yeah, I didn't know anything about grounding, so I found that really helpful. And now that's something that I can apply to my work moving forward with my clients and for myself as well. Great. We wrote that script, and it's taken directly from the grounding paperwork that was sent out to you. Now, every skill isn't going to match every person. Keep in mind, there are some clients, and myself included, who prefer a more physical approach to grounding based on body movements. That works well for me. But you have other people who like something that's more thought-based, where they're providing names of things around them. So it's a process to figure out what works best for each person that you encounter. Thank you so much. Of course. Jules. What I noticed with my clients who have complex PTSD is they touch things a lot. They're constantly touching things, and that's fine. They may look around, they may hold things. And I think it's important to have things ready and accessible in the environment for that. They may think, oh, I can't touch this, but I encourage them to go ahead and have those things ready so that there are some ways that they can find control and feel that they are in control of themselves while they're in my office. Yes, that's helpful to have weighted blankets in your office, other things, maybe provide stones, small stones that you could lay out and try to make it look like, things that are sensory so that they can be active, Mikai. I'd like to add to that thing about the sensory thing.
At Heiser Hearing Institute and at Gallaudet.
Yeah, they have a box with rice and other small boxes as well that people can try things out that are tactile. They can kind of put their hands in the rice and feel for things that are inside of there. And that seems to be really, really helpful. And this Melissa, yes, absolutely, go for it. Oh, Dee Harding, I'm sorry I overlooked you.
Dominique.
The tactile part is interesting when when you think of tissue and how soft it is, just taking it, kind of rubbing it against you, that could keep you connected as well. And help you be grounded. Melissa, yes, absolutely. Most approaches with a trauma survivor it's all about offering them options, several things at the same time, having them try out different things, what's available in the office, and presenting it to that person so that the person themselves can make the choice of what they would like to use and take advantage of as they're trying to ground themselves. It's like an invitation. It's an invitation to explore. Maybe they can do this or they can do that. The approach is it's not a forceful approach. Whatever language you use for that, just make sure that it doesn't come across as forcing them to do anything. Because some people respond well to that offer, that invitation. It's a very soft approach to things, and it's empowering as well. This is Makai. I have a question. It may not be related to the invitation part, but people in general, like you have people who are nail biters or people who suck their thumbs or twist their hair while they're sucking their thumbs, pull on their ear. Would those behaviors be part of soothing? Is that part of what we're talking about here today? It's still a bad habit. So how can you reconcile that? What type of tactile solutions are we looking at that are helpful for people as opposed to bad habits like nail biting or sucking one's thumb or twiddling their hair, that sort of thing? This is Melissa. That's a good question. I look at it from a helpful lens. It's a behavior. And so it would depend. Again, that people always throw out, it depends, but it does depend. It could be dysfunctional. It could be an interruption. It could be something they do in their everyday life or not. Many people are nail biters, and really that's fine if it helps that person get through their everyday life and manage their stress. Maybe that's the point of it, and that's fine. Now if they do it to the point that they're bleeding all over the place, well, that can become infectious, and that's a different story. So maybe we want to find something else, another soothing skill to replace that one. Now, often, if we chastise a person about what they're doing, or we try to take something away from them that they're using to soothe themselves for some reason, that can cause harm rather than be helpful. From my approach, I'm not trying to hurt anyone, so I may leave something like that alone, the things you've mentioned. That person, if they want to change, that's one thing. But if it's something they use in their everyday life and it's helpful, then maybe we can help them else. Yeah, but
I get it. I get it. Okay.
Yeah, find a healthy replacement.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, final thoughts and questions. Anthony. Yes. So that security blanket, would that be part of PTSD? Well, like a weighted blanket? Oh, you're talking about like kids using a security blanket? I think a security blanket is more of something related to connectedness. Children,
Attachment.
they have attachment to things, whether it's their stuffed bear, if it's their blanket. Often you'll see that happen when they're working towards becoming more independent of their parents. And during that transition, where they're trying to separate themselves from their parents, you'll see them use objects. And it's often a reminder of their parents. It's in place of their parents as they go through that phase of moving away from dependence on their parents, that distance from them. So it's like, yes, I have distance from my parents, but I also have something with me to keep me safe. So I think it's a security thing, and it's very normal. It's a healthy part of growing up. Okay, thank you. Yes, Paula.
I was just going to add with the security blanket, there are other things that causes sensory seeking. Sometimes it's just that they're kids that are really sensitive. Oh my gosh, the words are not coming to me now. Sensory seeking, but there's other diagnosis that may lend towards more of that security blanket or the holding on to things. Just because that's part of something else. It doesn't always mean PTSD.
Okay, thank you for adding that. Okay, then. All right. I think we're done. This is Michelle. I know everyone's minds are racing. They're thinking about what they've learned today. Thank you for the presentation and the discussion. And I hope in the future you are able to come back and share some more. We appreciate so much what you've taught us today and the perspective you've given and also the clarification of things. And the film that you showed, wow, very impressive. So many thanks to you. Thank you for having me come. This is Makai. I'd like to talk to you briefly afterwards, or directly. Sure. This is Michelle. Yeah, after we all leave the session, but let's stop the recording before we do that piece if you two want to talk directly. Okay. All right. Well, thank you, everyone. You will be sent the PowerPoints, and please let us know any future topics that you would like covered. Thank you all, and thank you for the interpreters and the captioner as well. Thank you for your time, Melissa, for everyone's time. Bye-bye.